Hello and welcome to the Mansfield Town Shirts YouTube channel, where again today we are going to upset the entirety of League One as we look back at the 24-25 season and rank every single team. We're going to be ranking teams in 5 different categories ranging from incredible to downright terrible. Let's get into the video. So then let's get straight into it with our first team, and our first club is Bolton Wanderers. And I'm really sorry, Bolton fans, I know there's a lot of you. It's been a pretty terrible season, really. Lost in the playoffs last season, in the playoff final, nonetheless. Tipped by many for automatic promotion, and it just hasn't happened this season. Finishing 8th is not good enough for Bolton Wanderers, considering the squad and the size of the club, and recent performances in League One. So, yeah, terrible season for Bolton. The next club is a bit of a difficult one, and I know there'll be people saying, well, if you put Bolton in terrible, why haven't you put these in terrible? And that club is Peterborough. The one thing that skewed this for me is winning the cup. Now, we know they've sold a lot of their more senior players and they've brought in a lot of younger players, which is kind of their model anyway. But I'm sticking them in below expectations. Finishing 18th and finishing below Mansfield is not a good achievement for Peterborough. But winning the EFL trophy against Birmingham, for me, just kind of says, well, yeah, you don't have the greatest league season, but the season as a whole isn't terrible because they've got something out of it. So for that reason alone, and I'm sure somebody will disagree with me saying, oh, you're supposed to be a league review, you not count the cups, but they won the EFL trophy. So as a whole, below expectations, but I'm sure Peterborough fans won't mind too much with the trophy in their pocket. Our next club then is another massive club in League One, one that was relegated from the Championship last season and spent an absolute fortune only to finish 10th. And that's Huddersfield Town. They spent a fortune in the summer, had really high expectations. They're a very big club, a ground that I love going to, Huddersfield. Terrible memories from playoff finals of yesteryear, but for me, they've had a really terrible season. 10th is not good enough for them, and they will absolutely need to improve for next season. Moving on to another club who have had a terrible season, and that is Shrewsbury. That 15 points, I think, less than they managed last season. Relegated, of course, as well. I thought Gareth Ainsworth might keep them up when he came in, and they won a few games, especially against Mansfield in February when it was. But yeah, terrible season and relegated in the end. Up next then to Blackpool, and Blackpool for me, as expected, they finished, I think it was one point lower, I think, than they gained last season. 1 place, lower than last season. I would have expected them to have been in and around the playoffs. Admittedly, they were quite far off in terms of points, but they weren't necessarily in terms of position. So, if you're judging by position, they're sort of roughly where I thought they would be. Up next then is Lincoln City, who for me have been below expectations. Finished 11th, I think it was, but 17 points outside of the playoffs, considering they narrowly missed out by 2 points last season. I thought they were a really good side when we saw them at Mansfield, but yeah, unfortunately it didn't happen for them, and certainly a season below where they would have expected to be. So the next one, I'm going to confuse everybody by moving a team who were pretty terrible into the as expected. But for Crawley Town, I expected them to get relegated, especially when Scott Lindsay left. I know he came back towards the end, but didn't expect anything from them, and in the end we didn't really get anything from them. But yeah, we expected them to get relegated, and they did. So for me, yes, it's not a great season. You could argue it's terrible, but it's absolutely as we expected, which was getting relegated back to League Two. As always, I do just want to say a massive thank you to everyone so far who has supported the channel by watching the videos, liking and subscribing and commenting as well. We had a lot of support for the last video, which, as I said at the start of this video, may have upset a few as we ranked the best away fans that I'd seen down at the One Call Stadium last season. If you haven't seen that, check it out. The link's in the description. And if you could like this video, comment if you've got a different opinion to mine, which I'm sure you will have, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you very much. Right then, moving on. Stevenage, as expected, slightly below where they finished last season, but absolutely bang average is where I would expect Stevenage to be, and that's a really finish this season. The next one then, Rotherham United. I've stuck Rotherham in below expectations. They didn't finish where they would have liked to have finished, certainly not where I think a lot of them expected following relegation from the Championship. They are the ultimate yo-yo team between League One and the Championship. But unfortunately, the season under Their large manager at the start of the season didn't help. They brought in Matty Hamshaw towards the end of the season, who steadied the ship a little bit, but certainly wasn't where they would expect to finish. I certainly think they'll be wanting to finish higher than 13th next season, which is where they finished this season. I'm sure Hamshaw will be trying to push them up the table. So the next side is Wycombe, and it came so close to being an incredible season for Wycombe. They are absolutely above expectations for me compared to where they finished last season, 10th last season in League One. This season saw a 19-point improvement on last season, and like I say, they came so incredibly close. They sort of faltered towards the end after having been so close throughout the season to Birmingham, and then Birmingham started to pull away and they started to drop points. Wrexham overtook them, and then unfortunately that was the end of that. But to finish inside the playoffs and be so close to automatic promotion is for me why Wycombe have certainly been above expectations and also close to being an incredible season. Right then, Leyton Orient, a team who came so close to getting promoted through the playoffs, ultimately losing in the final. They were a lot better off than they were last season. Certainly one of the best teams that I'd seen Mansfield played this season. A fantastic manager, and had a great season finishing the playoffs. Certainly for me above expectations. If I'd had to have picked my 4 to finish in the playoffs at the start of the season, which I'll be doing this season, so look out for that, I wouldn't have put Leyton Orient in there. So fair play to Wellens and the team for that finish, and for that reason they're going above expectations. Right then, up next is Barnsley. Barnsley, terrible. Sorry, Barnsley. Mansfield did the double over you, which says enough, unfortunately, for how our season ended. The fact that we did the double over them. Their worst finish in 20-odd years. I know they had a new manager, but they were beaten in the playoffs last season, so I think they expected to be in and around there. I certainly expected them to be in and around there. They bought Mansfield's best player, Davies Keeler, done a player set certainly for higher things than League One. They did have a new manager in ex-Mansfield player, Darryl Clark, but yeah, it's not been a great season for Barnsley. They've been way off the pace all season and finished 12th. So yeah, a bit of a terrible season for the men from Oakwell. Up next then is Wigan. You could argue in 15th, Wigan have had a terrible season. I mean, for me, I didn't expect as much of them as I expected of Barnsley and Huddersfield and Bolton, for example. So Wigan, for me, just below expectation. I fancied them to be a little bit higher, not massively higher. I wasn't expecting them in the playoffs, but yeah, where they finished in the end was below where I think they would have expected to be, and probably where I thought they would be as well. Right then, the next club is Exeter. Now Exeter did very well in my previous video where we ranked away fans. If you didn't get a chance to watch that, the link's in the description, so check that one out as well, as I upset most of League One, as I'm probably currently doing now. Exeter, as expected, they finished in and around where they did last season. I haven't really got a lot more to say than they finished roughly where I thought they would do. Right, then we move on to a club that I seemed to upset in my previous video when I suggested their away support was Tin Pot. You only brought 500 or so when it's down the road. Get over it. And I stand by that. But I will allow the Cobblers to move into as expected. Now, they finished 19th, which isn't great, but they have a very small budget from what I understand. And yes, they finished lower than where they did last season. But for me, I expected to have been in that sort of lower bottom half. So the fact that they finished in there for me was roughly as expected. They weren't necessarily massively in a relegation battle, really, sort of until the end of the season when a few clubs like Burton and Crawley started to pick up points. But yeah, I think you're as expected, Northampton, I think. So hopefully that hasn't offended you. It probably has now, but yeah, if it has, then I stick by it anyway. Moving swiftly on to a club where there wasn't really any other option other than putting them in terrible. That is unfortunately Bristol Rovers. Getting relegated this season is a terrible result for them. I know they had the manager that didn't particularly get on with in the end, but yeah, when we played them, they were horrifically bad at their ground, especially. Watching them, it wasn't really a surprise, but certainly at the start of the season, I did not have them in my bottom 4 to get relegated. The fact that last season they were 14 points better off and finished 15th really does highlight the disparity between last season, and I think most people would have had them in and around that same position, sort of 15th to maybe even 13th to 17th, somewhere in there. But yeah, relegated back to League 2 is a terrible season for them. So then we have our first entry into the incredible section for Stockport County. Finishing third with 87 points in League One, having just come up from League Two, having the meteoric rise that they've had since dropping down to the National League North is nothing short of incredible. We didn't finish a million miles behind them as Mansfield last season, and we finished close to Wrexham, who are still to come on this list. But for Stockport to sort of be in and around us, yes, they've got good owners and they have spent money. They certainly have a reasonable wage budget. They lost Louis Barry as well halfway through the season. But for me, incredible how they finished so high up the table with so many points. Unfortunately lost in the playoffs. They could have easily won that game. I mean, the finishing at the end of the game was shocking. But yeah, for me, an incredible season from Stockport, and they deserve every accolade going for the season that they've had. So then, I've moved to the top of your screen. I was down there. I'm now up here. And the reason for that is we have another terrible team. Well, terrible season. Not a terrible team. Terrible season. And that is Cambridge United. 10 points worse off than last season. The only good part about their season was their incredible kit, by the way. Love that from Umbro. But yeah, terrible season really for Cambridge. Relegated back down to League Two, and yeah, it just wasn't good really, was it? From start to finish they struggled, and they never really got going under Gary Monk, and the season didn't end much better either. So yeah, terrible season for Cambridge, unfortunately. Up next then is an entry into the incredible section, and it's another club that I really upset on my away fans rating video. As suggested by a Charlton fan, it was probably because I was bitter because we lost. So I do apologise, Charlton Athletic fans, but you are incredible. You've had an incredible season, to 32-point improvement from last season. Where you finished last season compared to now, getting into the playoffs, that late run where you were on absolute fire and almost caught up to the automatic promotion places. Maybe you would have if the season would have gone on for another few games. And then to win at Wembley, I mean, what an incredible end to an incredible season, and good luck in the Championship for Charlton Athletic. So then, our penultimate entry into the incredible section, not our penultimate team on this list, but our penultimate incredible selection, is an interesting one. It's Reading. They didn't finish inside the playoffs, they finished just outside. But considering where they finished last season, lower bottom half, to then finish just outside the playoffs with the absolute turmoil that their club has been in, they didn't know they'd have a club. There was dates set by the Football League where they were potentially going to be expelled and potentially the club disappear. For the players and the manager to play under that and still finish as high as they did, for me, from the outside looking in, is an incredible season. And I can't sort of put it any simpler than that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. So then, just 4 clubs to go. And this next club, I had a real battle where to put them. They, for me, kind of tick 3 boxes. So I'm going to put them in the middle. And that's Birmingham City. And let me explain, Birmingham fans. I don't want to upset you. Did they finish first where I absolutely expected them, and 90% of the footballing world, apart from one Bolton fan, expected them to finish top? Which they did. So that's as expected. Did they also spend a record amount of transfer money? They spent more in one window than my club's worth. They spent more in one window than the entirety of my club's Football League transfer history over the last 100 years. They spent more than that. So they absolutely should have finished first. But then they broke the points record and got 111 points. I didn't expect that. I expected them to get promoted, and I expected them to win the league, and I expected them to win it at a bit of a canter. But to win it with 111 points is definitely better than what I thought. It's also an incredible achievement. So you go, well, why haven't you put it in incredible? Just because the money that they've spent, they absolutely should have done. And I can't avoid that, unfortunately, just for the reason why it booted Huddersfield down a couple of places, because they spent a lot of money and didn't get any results. Birmingham did spend the money and did get results, but for me it's above my expectations of the amount of points that I thought they would finish. And yeah, congratulations to them, and we wish them all the best in League One, in the Championship, because it was an incredible away day for Mansfield at their place at the end of the season. Up next then is Burton Albion, who finished 20th in League One. And that's exactly where I thought they would finish. And they did. Now, did they pull off a bit of a great escape? Absolutely. So if you'd have asked me at Christmas, this would have been above expectations. But they survived A little bit by the skin of the teeth at the end, but absolutely as expected that they would just about survive. They just about survived last season. They just about survived this season. They'll probably just about survive next season as well. So, Burton, hats off to you, as expected. So that then brings us down to 2 clubs. And we're going to stick my club, Mansfield, in here first. And I think we've been above expectations. To finish 17th with 54 points is more than I expected. And it's more than most people expected. When you look back, a lot of people had Mansfield in their bottom 4. We'd just come up from League 2. We'd not been in League 1 since 2002, 2003. And I think to, in the end, survive comfortably, despite having an absolutely horrific second half of the season. We were 3rd in October, flying high with Birmingham, Wycombe and Wrexham. And then the wheels came off after Christmas. But all in all, if we had to look at this season as a whole, and a finishing position of 17th, and a points tally of 54, considering we barely spent a penny. We made a lot of money off Keeler Dunn, but we didn't really spend any of it other than maybe Will Evans. We had a lot of injuries. We lost a lot of players second half of the season. I think we finished above most people's expectations. So then you might have guessed that the final club is Wrexham. And I haven't left them to the end for any reason other than I had a bit of a debate internally as to whether it was above expectations or incredible. You can see I've left a bit of a gap in incredible, and for me I think it is an incredible achievement. Hollywood, I know what you're saying. Oh, you're just putting them in there. You know, they've spent a fortune. A lot of clubs spend a fortune in League One, and a lot of them are a hell of a lot further down this list. Came out of League 2 with Mansfield and Stockport last season. So to finish 2nd above some of the big teams in this league is incredible. Yes, like I say, they've spent some money. They've obviously paid some big wages, I'm sure. But they've built it on a solid foundation, really good tactics from the manager. And I think, top 2 for me was not where I thought they'd finish. I thought they maybe would be in and around the playoffs. But to get automatic promotion, to get over 90 points as well, for me, I don't think it can be classed anything other than an incredible season. And I know Birmingham fans are saying, yeah, but we won the league, we got 20 odd points more, whatever. And I get it. And you have had a great season, both of you. But for me, Wrexham was less expected than Birmingham. For that reason, I'm putting them incredible. And that is a wrap for our review of 24-25 and ranking all of the team's performances. I'm pretty certain there'll be fans of a few clubs, maybe most of them, that maybe don't agree with what how I've seen it this season. So if you're one of those people, comment on this video and let me know what you think you would have done differently, or where you think I might have gone wrong, or even those that you think I might have got right. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you could like it if you haven't already, and please do subscribe for more content similar to this. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next one.